All right, you guys. I'm linking the live stream now in Classroom. If you want to just see the 14-second delay of what I just said, if you miss it. Yeah, it's actually going to be in the Classroom. I'm just going to link it on the bottom here. And
Andrew's not a G host.
okay, and we are live, and we are doing it live.
Great.
All right, so here's the Bash workshop with Chris, and to get here, we go to Classes anywhere in Google Classroom,
Wait, are we bashing him?
and we type in, and we go to Information Technology. And we're not bashing anybody, Angela.
Angela, you get
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, please don't.
All right, Bash workshop. There's again a whole bunch of introductory material, like saying that SSH or secure shell is a method of pretty much remoting into servers using port 222.
Just 22.
Just 22.
Just 22.
And it's right here. And I'm excited. But basically, it gives you a command line interface that you can use to send commands securely over the internet through something like a VPN tunnel. It's VPN-like tunnel. It encrypts your information.
And
Putty,
what
yeah.
are we downloading? What's the thing that we have to download in order to instantiate that connection?
a proxy?
A client, yes, but what do we need to connect to the server? We're a key. We're connecting a key, right? So anytime you connect via SSH, you have to have something called an SSH key. And that key, it's a cryptographic key. That key is used to secure communication.
Does it use a prime number thing? Does it use a prime number thing?
For sure, absolutely.
And that's what those two sections are about. Feel free to give those a read because it's really important information. Look them up online if you're really interested in SSH and encryption or authentication keys. So all this is about installing Putty. This one tells you to go to the Putty website and then click the here link and then click the 64-bit MSI installer. Yeah.
So Alex, John, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks.
Which one?
Oh, he says he has a sore throat or something like
What?
that.
It's okay.
You see his face?
Aw.
It's okay.
Thanks for the update. All right, so
Sore throat didn't stop me today.
you got a sore throat
No,
too?
I'm kidding.
Oh.
I was really stoked to come. I've been looking forward to this for a while.
And then it gets you to the MSI installer file, but I just linked it below, so you can go to the third link here and click it, and it automatically downloads it.
Let's open up that key file. Let's just take a look at it. It's a giant text file.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just for the curious.
Yeah. So I have to download it first. After it's downloaded, we can show it in folder, and then we can just open it up in Sublime Text because that's our standard text editor kind of thing.
It was an actual button on there.
Yeah, right here. And this is what it looks like.
Open this up. So this is what a cryptographic key looks like. That's all it is. It's just text.
Yeah. But this is going to be interpreted as zeros and ones binary. And it's a very long binary string. I think something like maybe 512 bits or 256, depending, or 384.
It doesn't look like hexadecimal either.
It's not.
It's not. This, if it were hexadecimal, it would be longer. It would look longer, at least.
I think the character mapping is ASCII. It's, not Unicode.
Yeah, totally. All right, so we click, it's super secure way of transmitting info on the internet nowadays. All right, so we have downloaded that. That comes later, and that's what the key looks like. Right up here, I previously installed it, but if you click this and you went through the installation steps, this is kind of what it looks like. You wouldn't see this. You just keep picking next, put in a password if necessary. I'm going to cancel that installation. It's already done. And then we just look for Putty on our machine if it's not on your desktop, and mine's already open. And here it is. First step, if this is where you are, is to type ec2-user at, and our IP address right now will change later. This instance might not be running later. So in order to get it to run later, you might have to install like VirtualBox and a virtual machine, or ask me to start the instance, and then you can run into it again to practice at any time in the future. But this IP address is good for now. 13.
What's the significance of this before the IP address?
Oh,
Why
sure.
don't we just type in the IP address?
It's showing who's logging
Exactly. And on AWS and Amazon Web Services, I believe the default, whenever you rent a server, you spin up a virtual server, I believe that's the default user name.
It sure is.
Yeah.
EC2-user is an Amazon Web Services user.
Yeah.
AWS is the cloud arm or side of the Amazon business, and they make most of their money now on the cloud, more than retail by far.
Yeah.
And one thing you can do is you can make virtual machines on there, which are basically computers or run operating systems on their hardware. Right now we're running a Linux operating system. And you're going to go into it. And you have full administrative access and control over it, so please don't mess anything up. That just amounts to a couple of minutes of waste of time on me, which I don't want. But this should be the IP address, otherwise I'll have to go check it pretty soon. Put this port number here. And now we're gonna do one very important configuration option, which is to click the plus next to SSH in the sidebar. And then once that's expanded, choose off. Don't click the plus next to off, click off. And you'll be brought to an options controlling SSH authentication screen.
The private key file for authentication is that SSH key we downloaded earlier.
Exactly. So you're going to click browse here. And next to browse, I already downloaded it. In the instructions, you'll download it first, of course. It'll be in your downloads folder. Here it is. I click it, I press OK. And don't click open yet. Go back up, change the appearance next to window, click appearance. Don't click window. And then next to font settings, click change. Sometimes it starts out pretty small. I'm going to increase this because we're doing a visual, we're actually doing a lab here and it's live. I'm going to increase that quite a bit. I wish I could change the color here. That would look pretty cool for like green or something. You probably could, I'm just not looking. Colors, look at that. Default cursor text. Which one's the just the text of the? I think it's cursor text. And then we'll modify that to be just like
Green, matrix green.
yes. It's probably something like that.
Dope.
Yeah. Add to custom colors, choose OK. And now we go to session again on the top left. We want to type in next to save sessions a name to save our session. We don't want to configure it again. Type in bash workshop and then click save.
Conceptually, the concept of saving a session, let's say you had multiple sessions in play. What that would mean is, let's say you had two servers you were trying to administrate. One has one IP address, another has another IP address. You have two separate keys to connect to which you could have multiple sessions and then just kind of bounce back and forth between the two without having to go through the whole overhead of setting up the IP, adding the key, and all that.
I'm not sure if we'll be limited by the number of current users or sessions open.
Well, it's hypothetically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, if we have like multiple environments or targets we're trying to connect to.
We'll see. Click open, and hopefully that works out. And after this, you don't have to read all this. Click yes, because we trust the host, and then we're brought into our machine. You want to take over?
Yeah. Yeah. No.
It's not working.
Any questions?
So, you know.
This all kind of makes sense a little bit.
Kind of basic. It's telling you login time.
Yeah.
Where you're connected to.
And you only need to download it once.
Yeah.
But there's a 7 packages needed for security meeting.
And now you'll save it as something. Save.
D-
So, I have a question.
Yeah.
Is that those commands you're using?
Great question. Do you want to repeat it for everybody else? So the question is, are these DOS commands that we're using? First question for you, why would you think it's DOS?
Because I think I saw that command, DOS might
DOS might actually have a very similar command. So notice how this is a PC. I'm on a PC. We're connecting to Linux servers. We're using the command line. How is it that I'm connecting with a PC to a Linux server? How is it that the commands I enter here are Linux commands, but I'm still on a PC? PuTTY. That's why we downloaded that thing PuTTY. PuTTY is basically the tool, the client that enables us to connect to a Linux server and then run like Linux specific commands, even though this is a PC. Even though if I opened up a command line on the PC, it would probably be DOS, right? Do all of you have like a notebook or because there's a handful of commands I think all of you should either commit to memory or write down or store. They're super basic. Oh, would you have any gum? Or is that a Swisher?
That's.
Oh, I feel it. Right on. What kind of Swisher? Get yourself a grape Swisher. Quit fucking around.
You know, I just went on a binge of grape swishers for like 2 weeks.
Got to mix it up a little bit. And then when you all are ready, and just want to put this out here, if there's anything specifically you all would like me to cover, like don't hesitate to ask. Oh, Jesus. Yo, I don't know how to use a PC.
You don't?
Not really. No.
Wait, really? Like, even though you're in IT?
No, I'm kidding. I kind of know how to use a PC. It's funny, though, when my girlfriend has a PC for work, and she, whenever it stops working, she's like, can you fix this? I'm like, is it Linux? Can you all see this up here? Do you want me to move this?
It's...
Okay, I can move this.
No, it's plenty visible.
Is this...
You get it to clear.
That's a great question. So, the first command, super straightforward. If you want to clear everything on the terminal, you type clear. If we want to see who the current user logged in is, so for example, maybe you're connected to a server, you don't know which account you're actually using. Who am I? Now that's kind of basic. It's probably dull and not very interesting. If we want to list all of the current files and or folders in our current directory, ls. And there was nothing here. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, one fundamental concept, though, with command lines we all have to understand. We have these things on the left. These are our commands. Julius, can you see that? Do you want me to try to blow it up?
No.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's just, it's not the screen, it's my glasses.
Okay. All right. Yeah, well, if you all want me to try to blow this up, we can. Notice our command here on the left, ls. What does this do?
List the directory.
List all the stuff in the current directory. In Linux, one of the more powerful features about the Linux command line is this thing called flags. Flags are basically arguments or parameters we can pass to individual commands themselves, if that makes sense. It's a way of like taking a command, but then like customizing that command. By putting the -alt, it's like saying, give me a long listing of directories, like show me everything here. Linux also has another convention. Anytime you precede either a file or directory with a period, it's a hidden directory, if that makes sense. So by ls.alt, this shows me all the current folders or files in this directory, including the hidden ones. So I don't really have anything here. If I wanted to move around the file system, either move up a directory or down a directory, any idea how I would do that? CD. Yeah, change directory, CD. So if I did something like, okay, cat, C-A-T, will show me the contents of a file. So I think this .ssh, this bash rc is a file if I want to look at the contents of that. Holy shit. Cat bash rc. Okay, so this is actually a file and this is the contents of the file. What this is, it's a configuration file. But, for example, let's say we wanted to customize our terminal. Let's say we wanted to have like custom font or custom font color or maybe a custom function or things like that, like configuration. We could do something like that in a file like this. Questions, thoughts?
So what are we doing right now?
Just kind of moving around the file system and whatnot. If you're connected via SSH, just run some of these commands. In fact, let me write some of them down.
So you said the cat.bashrc is just like going into that file.
It will, yeah, it'll print all the contents of that file. That's
Okay,
right.
so we've got ls, which is listing the
Yep.
contents of,
Yep.
of the directory.
Yep.
And we've got cd, which is change directory.
Yep.
And then we've got cat, which shows you the file contents of the file.
Yep.
If I got that correct.
Exactly.
I can write that down.
Yep. LSCD U M I cat.
Who downloaded the live stream? I'm gonna beat you up.
Somebody did that?
Yes. Someone downloaded the live stream. I uploaded it again. That's alright. Someone do that. Chris is speaking. That's so disrespectful. Wake up, Angela.
It's all good. All good. When we use text editors, generally what text editor do we use in the class?
Is it mine?
Sublime. Are we familiar with the, it's a three-letter acronym, GUI, G-U-I?
Which is graphic user interface.
Graphical, very good. Graphical user interface. Is Sublime Text a text editor that uses a graphical interface?
No.
Sort of, yeah, it is. Because you do have menus and whatnot, you can click around with the mouse and whatnot. Technically speaking, Sublime Text has a graphical interface. In contrast to something like Sublime Text, you actually have command line text editors where you can do all your text manipulation like via the command line. It's kind of badass. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. So let's say I wanted to create a file. I just want to create a file. Another command is called touch. So if I did something like touch file.txt, this will create a file called file. Is the file empty, or do you think there'd be anything in it?
It's empty.
It's completely empty. How would I check that this file's empty?
You would use the LSALT.
I could use LSALT if I wanted to read the contents of a file.
LS or cat?
Cat, yeah. So I'm going to type cat in the name of the file. Nothing, because the file's empty. I want to put some text in that file. Vim, bless you, is super badass. Vim is a command line text editor. It's used primarily with DevOps people and systems administrator people, but basically when you connect to a server or some kind of resource somewhere, you got to modify text, you got to modify a configuration file, what have you. You don't have Sublime Text installed in that guest environment, you'd use this tool called Vim. It's badass. So if I type Vim in the name of the file, that's what a command line text editor looks like. I know, super exciting. It's blank, but it's incredibly useful.
Have you ever heard of Emacs?
Yes, I have.
That's the other one that I
That's the other big one, yeah.
I've heard of them before, but the other one that I knew about was Emacs.
It's kind of like programmer humor, but there's been this debate going on for about 50 years, which is the better text editor, Emacs or Vim.
Okay.
And people are generally very polarized over one or the other. People are generally like, I'm an Emacs user, Emacs is the way it is, or they're like Vim for life and they get it tattooed on their chest.
Goodness.
Those are the two.
And
They're-
why does it have to be between those two? What about the graphic command line, or the graphic text editor?
Great question. Let's reason through it for a second. Why do you think that might be?
Is it
In like, deep kind of programming circles and whatnot, why you would have the affinity for like the text base as opposed to the graphical ones?
I would take it, they don't have to take their hands off the keyboard.
That's one reason, yeah, that's one reason. Context switching is another reason. Another thing to consider though, especially people who are doing kind of like non-trivial systems administration, right? Like people like say Google or YouTube, whatever, who are literally responsible for managing like fleets of servers and whatnot.
Sure.
It's all done on the command line. Whole thing is done on the command line.
So then it's Vim or
So then it's Vim or Emacs. That's right.
or the most popular ones.
For sure. And you know what? At the end of the day, I'm personally a Vim user, but at the end of the day, like they both do the same thing. You're manipulating text on the command line. No, not yet. Someday though.
That'd be kind of cool.
It's right over my Thug Life tattoo. Right. I don't have enough real estate to. So if I did something like, boom. And remember, this is a text editor. I don't have a mouse to click around with, so I have to do all of this on the command line. Write quit.
How
So
did you go all the way down?
you have to hit the escape key and then you hit colon, and so there is a tiny bit of a learning curve with both Vim and Emacs, but it's immensely powerful because I don't have to open up a graphical program or anything. I don't have a mouse, so I type write quit. It's going to save hello class to the file. The file has been changed since reading it. Do I really want to write to it? Do I? Yeah. Okay. How do we verify that we actually have written to that file?
Cat.
Somebody other than you? I'm kidding. Cat. It's right here.
It's a cat.
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 Cat. Yeah.
Yeah, cat file that text.
Yeah. And if I want to clear this, I want to clear all the stuff on the screen. How do
Clear.
Thank you. Thank you. Just making sure everybody's on their toes. So we should. So if I run ls, check this out. Look, boom. We have a file in there now, right? And go ahead. And then if I cat another file, what should I see?
Nothing.
Nothing. Yeah.
Because so touch creates the empty file.
Yep.
And then cat lets you check stuff.
Yep.
The Vim command opens it up in Vim so you can add stuff to it.
Yeah.
There you go.
Absolutely.
That's what I've got.
That's beautiful. Yeah. If we want to print characters to the terminal, and you'll see why in a couple moments why that can be pretty useful, there's another command called echo. We've talked about data types a little bit in JavaScript, and what's the other language we're learning? Unity? Unity? Okay. How far did we get with JavaScript?
Oh, the languages. So JavaScript's one language.
How far
we
did
got
we
to the
get?
document object model there.
Okay.
And then C# is the language we use.
C#. All right.
In PHP, when you're printing something, you use echo.
In PHP, that's right. That's right. Absolutely. That's a good observation for sure. Okay, let's take a step back. Let's just think JavaScript for a second. Computer Programming 101. Data types, primitive data types. What are the fundamental data types? Remember how computers store information differently. Computers will store numbers differently than they store strings of characters, right?
So when you say data type, you're talking like images, videos.
Even more fundamental data type is
Integers.
numbers.
integers, that's right.
Strings.
Strings, that's right.
Oh, and booleans.
And beautiful. Great job, class. Those are the three, and think about that for a second. Those are the three fundamental data types: strings, integers, booleans. Everything else in a computer, everything, every song you've ever listened to, every game you've ever played, every video you've watched on YouTube was made up of those basic data types.
Not even more basic than that, bits.
And even more fundamental than that bit, right? And what is a bit?
Just on or off.
On or off, right? And even more fundamental than that, on or off, yeah. It's either on a fundamental level, either a positive charge or the absence of a positive charge. Yeah, and that's how computers work. If I say echo and we see some quotes up here, what data type?
String.
It's a string, right? Exactly. Very good. So if I echo oh, okay, I'm actually glad this happened. So I have an exclamation point in here.
doesn't recognize it?
Computers are stupid, right? Let's just put that out there. This is technically a special character. So when the computer sees the exclamation point right up next to the end of the quote, it confuses the computer. So we have to do this thing called escape the character. Basically, we have to have another special character before the special character to tell the computer it's a special character.
Another thing.
Does that make sense? It's crazy. I didn't design these systems.
The reason why is like the exclamation mark sometimes can refer to an operator and not.
Right, exactly. That's right. And that's because computers, right, a lot of these characters, the exclamation point especially is a special character. It has to do with logical operations. So the computer rightfully assumes that, hey, what's that exclamation point doing in there? What are we trying to do? If we were to escape that character, okay.
Did it not find it on that one?
Yeah. Okay, there are different terminal isms that vary based on different. Remember how Linux comes in different flavors? What do we call different flavors of Linux?
Distributions.
Distributions, right? Different distributions have different kind of quirks. I'm imagining that this EC2 instance is probably running on some flavor of Ubuntu Linux. Case in point, if I use single quotes here, this will automatically escape any special characters, if that makes sense. Another really kick-ass thing with Linux is this thing called environmental variables.
What?
Environmental variables. So we all know what a variable is in JavaScript. What does a variable do?
It's the thing that stores data?
Yeah, and why? For sure, right. So an example would be like var my name equals Chris, right?
Store data from because
Yes, sir.
I just realized that I thought maybe we're all connected to the same server, but maybe that we all had our own like instance.
No, we're all connected to the same server right now, yeah.
Because I catted the file.txt and I found the hello class in there.
Julian, could you humor me or anybody else who's connected? Can you touch and just random file and then I will, yeah, so we're all, fun fact, we're all connected to the same instance right now.
Right, so I'm going to touch random underscore file dot txt, and then I'm going to give it txt, and then I'm going to
Angela,
add.
have I just bored you to tears?
Come on. It happens every day. It's not.
I was going to say, if that's me, I apologize
If
for
it's not the
being
plus,
dull
it's
and
not.
uninteresting. I'll try to step it up next time.
Okay, so then we do. Okay, so how do we get down to the bottom of the vim thing, the vim file?
Ooh,
Escape. Escape.
colon, which is shift.
WD.
WQ.
All right. Now everybody can cat random underscore file dot txt.
You said random underscore file d.
Yes.
Are we human or are we? I don't know, sir.
Look at this. So Julian just created a file, same host, Julius, excuse me, pardon me. Julius created a file, we're all connected, same host, same server, and we see the file right there. Pretty exciting.
This is so. Is there a way to like see how many people are connected to the server?
Yes. Yeah, there's some networking commands.
Wasn't it ls?
Yeah, let me see.
Who, right?
Yep,
So there's 4 users.
yep. Hey folks, check this out. So remember who am I? What does who am I do? The command. Prints
Who the current user is.
If I type in who, it'll show me.
You just typed in who.
Yep. So there are 4 people connected right now.
No, it's gonna be unlisted. I mean, I'm just writing down these commands, even though they have the resources online.
No, it's good to write them down. And Julius, like I was saying, there's only about 5 or 10 that are like the core commands, right? Moving around the file system, creating files, removing files. Like that's, yeah, those are the building blocks.
I realize that there's a merit to creating those connections. instance, like is it share?
Oh, I completely agree. In fact, that's why I try not to take electronic notes. I prefer to, because you get that cognitive.
Yeah, then that would be a problem. I don't know whether this is true or not. The theory. There we go. A theory is not like whether it's true or not, but the theory is that when you type, you're like for every like word that you're typing, you're creating like 13 connections, like neural synapses. But if you write, it's more like 100.
For sure.
Right. So it's a big difference.
And you also have the visual component, I feel like, which also strengthens those synaptic connections.
How do you get out of this? Because like I went into edit, but like, how do you get out?
Okay, great question. Escape, colon, escape, colon,
That's shift.
shift, it's the 2 dots. Q,
Q.
mm-hmm,
Like this Q.
yep, exclamation point,
Exclamation point.
yep, enter.
I just realized since we're all connected to the same instant, there's no stopping somebody from editing my file.
Nope.
That's absolutely correct.
Even if it's secure, even if we're securely connected, anybody who has access to the server can change it.
Very good. So very important distinction to be made. The connection itself is secure. That is to say, and notice this, what do we notice here? This is the IP address domain of all the devices that are connected to the server. Because we're all connecting from the same network, the IP is the same.
Oh, and if you try to edit a file while somebody else is editing it, you get this error.
Yeah.
Error 325 attention. It's cool.
And that's how you also save it?
Save it is escape colon right quit. WQ, excuse
WQ.
me. Yeah.
Hey, Angela, did you want to do anything
So
else with this?
I take it Alexis is editing the file I created.
I just want to know how you do it.
Yeah. No, this is
But
good.
I will now.
It's working. It's my file.
You said.
Just type get out of my file.
You know who it is?
You said what?
Colon
Actually,
WQ.
oh.
Yeah, and these are great skills to have, right? Being able to just do basic file manipulation on the command line. So we were talking about variables. We're talking about, it's kind of a Linux-specific concept, but environmental variables.
So what does what does WQ and Q do in shit?
WQ stands for write quit. Q is just quit.
Okay.
And then Q exclamation point is quit the file, even if I've edited it, and don't save. It's basically like force quit.
It shows who's logged in.
Right. Does that quit? And then we've got just quit without saving. And then Q exclamation mark is just force quit.
Yep, yep.
So what's the difference between quit and force quit?
Quit will quit a file if you haven't made any changes to it. If you have made changes to it, you'll be prompted, do you want to save those changes? Q exclamation point is just like, close the text editor.
I'm done with this.
Yeah, I'm done with this. Right, exactly.
Get
Exactly.
What the?
Shut the front door.
All right, yo, I've got a question. So if we're all connected to the same EC2 instance, we're all basically using the same account. These are all the different connections. Why is this the same?
Is that our IP? That's like our ISP IP.
What does that mean? Absolutely. What does that mean? What does that even mean? What's an ISP? What is...
So the ISP gives us our own IPs, but the server is connected to the ISP's IP. So the internet service provider has its own IP that we're connected from.
Yeah. So the World Wide Web, the internet, is comprised of networks just like this. It's all the world's networks connected together to form like one large, massive super network. And ISPs, internet service providers, facilitate those connections.
We're apparently Comcast.
Correct.
So it means we should have different. If we that there's not only one ISP, there are different ISPs. It means if you connect to another ISP, we get a different IP address.
Sort of. This IP address is specifically the ISP we're all connecting from, and because we're all in the same network, we're all in the same network here in 1020. We're all going to have the same values here. If I fired up a hot, go on, Ramon.
No, finish it.
Oh, if I fired up the hotspot on my phone and I used the hotspot on my phone to connect to this, it would be different. It would probably say something, 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 T-Mobile, something, something, something.
So since everybody needs an IP address to connect to the internet to get information sent to you, that's our IP address right there. But more than that, our ISP, which is Comcast, is giving us a URL to also access our IP address. And that's the URL.
Yeah. No, and then then we could get into like a really long conversation about network address translation and DHCP and good stuff.
Yeah. But it's cool that we have our own web address in the same text, which also are the right.
So it means that IP address is specific to Comcast. And if you connect to another ISP, we get a different
Yeah.
IP address.
Yeah. Exactly. What are variables used for in any programming language? Why would I be interested in variables?
Because you need to store data before we start using them.
Yeah. Linux has this concept of environmental variables. They're conceptually they're the same thing as normal variables, JavaScript, C#, what have you. But they're variables we can use on the command line. And let me show you what I'm talking about. If I did something like, in Linux, environmental variables are always in all caps and preceded by a $sign. Let me show you an example. If I did something like,
So it's like a jQuery.
it's like what?
jQuery.
It's like yeah, you do see a lot of dollar exactly in jQuery. Ooh. Sick. All right. See what I'm doing on the command line? Normally when you see this kind of pattern, you're instantiating a variable, you're assigning a value, you see that in a programming language, JavaScript, Python, what have you. I'm doing this on the command line. So in the Linux operating system, there is a variable called user, all caps. Its value is a string, my name. Now, what if I wanted to get the value of this variable? What command would we start with? What do we do to print to a screen? Okay. So if I did something like echo $user, it's going to print the value. There. It doesn't seem super useful now, but I'll tell you all right now, especially for systems administrators and whatnot, being able to do this on the command line can be really, really helpful for any number of reasons. If I did something like
how do you, when it gets like this, it's sort of like, it's like I catted a file, but now it's like stuck in here, it won't go back to the directory. What was that command?
Control-C.
Control-C, which stands for?
It backs you out of your current process.
Control-C.
I want to pause here for questions, comments, thoughts. Is there anything specifically in the Linux sysadmin command line that anybody wants to see done or has any questions about? Otherwise, we'll just keep.
No, you're fine.
So this is like Linux?
This is Linux, yeah.
Okay.
It's Zug.
What's the point of you putting the user on the Chris? Just to add your name in there?
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah, just figured out how to do that.
What, Julius? What did you type?
Wall.
Wall.
Yeah, the command is wall.
What does wall do?
Wall just posts something to the wall. It's kind of like Facebook.
Okay, good analogy. How would we back out of this?
Just press enter.
Or what do we just cover, Julius? Control.
Control C.
Would you give me a Control C?
Wait, can I give you a Control C?
Yeah, can you? Wait, what happens when you hit Control C?
I'm already out.
Oh,
So
okay.
I executed.
So you ruined this for all of us.
Did I?
No, I'm kidding. If you type in reboot, let's see what happens.
Wait. Is that a good idea?
Yeah, no, because we'll just reconnect. It's fine.
Wow.
Wait, what?
And it even shows my name
Look
on
at
it.
this. Wow. All right.
Oh no! I've created a mess. 'Cause now people can just hit wall and it interrupts whatever I'm doing right now. But yeah,
Yup.
Thanks, Julius.
Yeah. Since I told you all how to post something to the wall, you just type in wall and then you can post something to the wall. But now we have to have some sort of moderation process because if everybody's posted to the wall, then I can't do anything. Nobody can do anything because it'll interrupt whatever you
Because
do.
you ruined class for the rest of us. That's
Yes,
cool.
I've
You said
literally-
to
yeah,
type
I
in
literally-
reboot.
Yeah,
literally
let's
ruined class for
It
the
gives
rest of us.
me
do it.
failed to execute operation.
Must be root. Okay. We'll talk about that. What root?
Oh no, there's
What root means? So in Linux or Unix, there's this term they call it the root user, but the root user is basically the user with the highest level of administrative privileges and whatnot.
Oh.
That's what root means in the context of Linux. So if ever you try to run a command or do something, and you get an error message that says, must be root to execute this command. That's what it means.
You have to be administrator.
You gotta be, yeah,
So
exactly.
so is wall just a command that any user can run apparently?
Yeah.
Okay.
Seems like it's just a message to
Yeah.
everybody.
It's so disruptive.
Yeah, it is. And, sorry, real super quick. Let me tell you all the history behind commands like wall, the concept of terminals. Years ago, when computers were still relatively new, super expensive, they were like the size of this room, right? Basic computers, to do basic arithmetic, you'd have a computer the size of this room. Okay. You would have terminals, though, in office buildings and like educational campuses, and the terminal was nothing. It was just a screen and a keyboard. The computer was in a big-ass mainframe, like in a room like this, that you would connect to. Point being, you would have multiple people on terminals with the screen and the keyboard, but they were all connected to a shared computer.
Circuitron.
Circuitron, yes, exactly. But does that make sense?
It sounds just like Tron because like they had terminals and they had mainframes.
Dude, Tron was such a good movie.
He went into the mainframe.
Right, but that's the history of that. So people would connect, they call them dumb terminals, because the terminals didn't have any compute power or processing power or hard drive. or anything like that. The terminal literally was just a screen, keyboard, and then you would connect to things. That concept is called multi-tenancy.
What?
Okay.
Martin?
Multi-tenancy. Yeah. Historically, computing environments were multi-tenant.
So like everybody had a terminal. But they didn't have-
Everybody had a terminal, but there was only generally one computer because computers were so expensive. Yeah. And just remember, the computational power of computers until fairly recently was like negligible at best. The average digital watch has more compute power than the computers that were used in the first moon mission.
So that's
What?
so hey, that's why they
That's
call them.
nuts.
That's why they call them personal computers.
That's why they call them personal computers. Absolutely. The concept of the personal computer. Any idea what decade that emerged?
1980.
In the 80s.
80s.
80s. That's key though. 80s computers. When was the first computer invented and why?
Well,
The
that's like
IBM.
that. You could. That's like
The IBM.
You could go back like to like the World War II.
That's where it started.
The Enigma thing.
Enigma. Yeah. ENIAC, Enigma. The world's first computers were created right around the end of the Second World War. They were huge. They were massive. They were even bigger than this room, and they were used for one thing.
Code
though.
breakers.
They were used for code breaking. When you fire the cannons, like the crazy large cannons on the side of like battleships, you know what I'm talking about? They're massive, right? They fire bullets like the size of cars.
So ballistics.
Those ballistic tables are very, very complex. So that's why the first computers were invented. It wasn't 30 years after computers were invented that people were like, oh, social media, email, personal computers. The first use case was entirely military.
So you meaning that means it's the first digital computer, not the first computer.
That's a very important distinction to make. First digital computer versus first computer. First computer, I want to say it was early 1900s, turning. Yeah, it was like a physical machine, like with knobs and gears that could do basic arithmetic functions. The rampant commercialization of technology that really started in the 80s started with Microsoft and Apple. And it was revolutionary, though. Both Steve Jobs and Bill Gates had a revolutionary concept. They said, what if we take computers and we make them accessible to people? And that was pretty revolutionary.
So basically, the multi-tenancy is after first computers, before the personal computer.
Precisely.
Sort of like in that intermediate.
Precisely, yeah. Conceptually, and this is like a much larger conversation, but conceptually we're kind of coming full circle because cloud computing, like that's just the general trend that the industry is going. Cloud computing, AWS, GCP, and Azure, right? Conceptually, those are multi-tenant environments because AWS, Google, et cetera, they've got these big data centers and they're renting out pieces of that data center. Like for example, this computer right here that Ramon spun up, this is a small-ass computer in AWS data center that we're all sharing. We're all sharing resources in that data center. So conceptually, it is kind of multi-tenant.
So this
I digress.
So this idea of the wall goes all the way back to
The first days, 60s and 70s.
60s.
Right.
So like we have like a wall in Facebook, and it's basically a bulletin board. But now we have back in multi-tenancy, we have a wall, which is like a bulletin board. So I'm able to post to the wall.
Yes.
And it's like and this is before bulletin board systems, which is
Mhm.
also like a wall.
100%.
It's like a thing. It's a very, I don't know what you call that. It's
Yeah.
evolution.
It's fascinating. You'll find out that so many of Linux and Unix's commands all go back to this period. So for example, the command to print something on Linux is LPM, it stands for line printer. And that's back in the day before they had modern printers where you had the
Dot matrix.
Yeah, exactly.
So line printer instead of dot matrix.
Exactly.
That's the difference.
Exactly.
Now it prints in pixels and dots. It just shoots dots of inks instead of lines of inks.
Yeah. It's fascinating. Unix, not Linux, Unix was invented by AT&T Bell Labs. Any idea when? Late? Give me, if we can get the right decade, it's fascinating. Unix, first Unix operating system.
First Unix operating.
Late 1960s.
Okay.
Yeah. Late 1960s. That's a trip to think about.
And those are the days of Richard Stallman.
Exactly.
That guy.
Yeah.
Who invented
Dennis
GNU.
Ritchie.
Absolutely.
Linus
Yeah.
Torvalds.
Linus Torvalds, that's right. What's Dennis Ritchie famous for?
For C.
Yeah, and for the curious, I'm actually learning some C right now. C textbook. It's pretty badass. You could do, in fact, a programmer years ago once told me that you could solve all of the world's problems with C and Bash.
The C family.
What? You could?
Most, if they're computational problems, you know. Yeah. Real quick, before I digress anymore, this concept of, in the Linux environment, environmental variables, super handy. And let me just show you an example real quick why.
Sorry to derail class.
Julius, yeah, why, man? Come on. No, these are good questions. Okay. I'm a systems administrator. There's a server that I connect to on a fairly regular basis. I'm too lazy to write the IP address down. I'm thinking of a more kind of programmatic way I could maybe automate some of the stuff I do. So I would do something like, so what have I done up here? That's not a real IP address, by the way. Could be. All I'm doing is I'm storing the string It just so happens that that string is an IP address. I'm storing the string in this environmental variable, but let me show you all in like a concrete use case. Let's say I wanted to connect to this device. I didn't want to type out the IP address. I'm tired of typing out the IP address. Computer programmers are lazy, by the way. Lazy people generally. I would do something.
So wait, remote underscore env is not a command.
No. I create. It's an environmental. It's right. It's a variable I created.
Okay. So.
But the distinction I'm trying to draw is that Linux has this concept of variables in the operating system, whereas whenever we deal with variables in like JavaScript and whatnot, it like conceptually very similar,
right.
But we're using it like on the command line level for these kind of administrative tasks. Now, if I did. This is the command to SSH into another resource, username at this variable, this value would map to this.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So we can see, I mean, this is kind of a contrived example, but we can see a very concrete use case for why environmental variables can be used.
So by that process, you like using that function to call the variable.
Yeah. Wait, say that again. Say that again. I want to make sure I understand.
You using like a function to call a variable like that is.
I'm using, yes, specifically I'm using that variable with the function being SSH, the variable being the IP address. Interesting. Am I boring you all to tears? Questions, comments?
It's very interesting. This is
He's like, get the hell out of here.
No,
Yeah, thanks, Chris.
Behind the hood, inside the hood.
Thanks. There's one more thing I want us all to cover, 15 minutes, and then we can call it.
Oh, we're gonna take a break?
Yeah. Do you want to, there's one thing I want to cover. Should we take a break now and then cover it later, or cover it?
Yes, because the server is gonna be down.
So cover it now?
No.
Yeah,
It's gonna be.
by 11.
You know what? Let's take a 5-10 minute break and we'll circle back. 5-10 minute break. It's fun. Trust me. Well, hopefully. Yeah, hopefully.
During the class, by 11:30.
He's hacking your internet.
There you go. That's how that's
That's really great.
a heckler. That's amazing. This is talent right here.
Isn't this cool? I mean, honestly, someone interested?
Somewhat. Well, yeah. I'm engaged enough to try and research how to. I wanted to see if I could do something like that. But I wanted to see if I could figure out. Like, I was engaged enough to try and see if I could figure out a way of sending a message to everybody. Like, because we're all connected to the same server. They're like somebody. I don't know. Something inside me told me that there had to be a way to send a message to everybody. Unless this was such an archaic system. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, multi-tenancy. We never had message. We didn't have instant messaging back in our day. Actually, they did apparently.
Yeah.
Apparently, they did have instant messaging.
I did that.
No, but I thought instant messaging was like a '90s thing. You know, like AOL, instant messenger.
PHP is cool.
Yeah. No, apparently, if you were on the same network, instant messaging was back in the 80s. That far back, instant messaging. I mean, it's not like the level of AOL, but
For sure.
yeah.
Don't pour that near me.
I personally am most interested in the networking side of things. I find conceptually that's so fascinating, right?
Right.
That's completely changed the world of human society. The ability to transmit information anywhere.
We have
It's
what a time to be alive. We have the information of the world at our fingertips.
yeah, no, it's a trip to think about.
Okay, I thought since I saved my name, it would show Alexis. But
This is cool.
And with that, you can create your own network DC on your own.
Yeah, right.
Messages anytime you want.
How did you know? This is a tech way to do it.
Also, I know yourself.
These are good
Oh, help still works on here too.
Yeah.
This is new to me.
Yeah.
I was a little bit lost.
I didn't even drink out of it. I enjoyed wasting coffee.
This stuff is super valuable. Because let me put it like this. Regardless whether you're going to front end development, back end development, ops, doesn't matter. At the end of the day, you're probably gonna encounter the command line.
I
And
didn't
like
know
basic.
that you can use variables.
Yeah, it's a trip. It is a trip. Does shell scripting ring a bell? Have you heard that term before?
What?
Shell scripting?
No.
Okay, that's the last thing I want to cover this morning.
Shell scripting, which is kind of looks like something we're about to do.
What's everyone doing for Thanksgiving?
Eating.
Okay, very good.
Hanging out with friends.
Yeah.
I go camping.
What?
Yeah.
How are you gonna go camping, but you can't go to the beach with us?
I'm not going camping with you.
He hates the water, remember? Ramon hates the
That
water.
was a community exercise, Ramon.
No, you know I don't do that stuff.
This is a test.
But when there are cute guys involved that are inviting me,
You know what? This is if there was only a way. Now I want to find out a way to name everything on the server because it's like there's no way to tell who sent a message.
Yeah, because they're all using the same user alias. Exactly.
And it's all the same IP. It's just 4 users. We did who, right?
Yeah, there's some other.
Oh no, actually, no. Yeah, there's no like.
There's a way you can find out.
There's just point 0, point 1, point 2, point 3, point 4. So apparently the whoever's point's 1,
Yeah.
and I can look at the screen. Screen watching.
Here, let me see something real quick. What is that? That theme?
No, this is it's a jig. It's an Irish jig.
Oh.
It's called the swallowtail jig.
oh, dude. So, yeah, that is a, I believe a class 2, or sorry, class B private IP. No, there's 10, then there's 127, and then there's 172. It's class C.
So we didn't with the real server.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Julius, this is relevant to finding out who's logged in and whatnot. Do you remember the command who? Do you remember what these are called? What the thing is with those? We've got a command flags. All of these different flags are like different arguments we can pass to the command who. So the point being, with the command who, there are other things we can pass it to potentially extract more information. Of all these flags here, what do you think would be the most valuable? We want to find out more information about who's logged in.
Probably lookup.
And actually what it does,
Yep.
is
Either that or...
allows you to spin up.
Oh, this is good. I like that.
Yeah, let me try that. I'm gonna try that.
Yeah, you try that, and then I'm going to try all.
And that didn't.
Okay.
Who lookup didn't work.
So if I do who,
You can transition from a magnetic drive to a solid state drive. To a
Who
solid
dash-
state drive with provisioned IOPS, which is really high throughput, very high performance.
And how did you
And
look
then
up
acts
those
on a cold hard
those
disk
flags?
drive all along
great
the
question.
system.
So if ever you're curious about a command, if you type in man in the name of the command, and the reason you type in man is because man is short for manual.
Oh, manual.
Yep. So if I type in man who, see what happens. Yeah.
Oh.
Question mark also does the same thing?
No, I'm just joking. Man, who? Question mark.
Oh, man who. So you man who, and it says
Any command. So if you did ls or man ls or
there's a built-in manual
yes.
on the shell. That's
yes,
kinda cool.
badass for sure. Reason being, before the rampant proliferation of the internet, this was your documentation. This was your instruction manual.
I don't have. It says description. Print information about users are currently logged in boot, you know, because it's been dead, and then
And you use the arrow keys to navigate through the man page.
You can also press H for help.
Press H for help.
Oh, wow.
I don't think there's like any like connected to it. The only like clue is like the order that people logged in.
Yep.
Just the time
Yep.
that they logged in. That's the only like unique like the time and the order, like the number. That's the only unique identifiers that everybody has.
I'll tell you right now, on a very fundamental level, and this is a really advanced topic, every process on a computer runs on a thread or multiple threads, right? So when you think about a dual core processor, a quad core processor, every process basically is mapped to a thread. Every user that is logged in, even if they have the same username, even if they're on the same network, will have a unique process ID.
Another question. So there are two types of methods the computer uses to handle tasks. Like
There are two kinds of what?
methods.
Yeah.
Before or FIFO.
Oh,
Determining which
yes.
task has more privilege. Like, so does this use the same procedure or?
On a very fundamental level, yeah. Because those concepts, FIFA, LIFA, first in, last out, last in, first out, etc., relate to like data structures, how you manipulate data with data structures. So yeah, like on a very fundamental level for sure. The particulars of which I forget. One thing to think about, Linux was written in C. So there's a lot of C-isms in Linux environments. What's up?
I was just looking.
Yeah.
Answer the question there? Nope.
All right, the last thing I want to cover, and I promise we'll only spend 10, 15 minutes on this, but it's a really cool concept, pretty kick-ass. It's this concept of shell scripting. Anybody have any idea what shell scripting is, does? Angela, I saw you looked up. What? Shell scripting, yeah.
Just writing to the shell.
Very good. Say what?
What?
That was him.
Well, let's say I had a file. Let's just say I had a text file with a bunch of Linux commands in there. Big text file, Linux commands, and I wanted to maybe automate something, or I wanted to run through all those commands in a file. Shell scripting. Let me show you an example. Vim. What does everything after a period mean?
What kind of file it is?
Yes, beautiful. File extension. So, yeah, sorry. So, by naming this file firstscript.sh, I'm telling the computer, hey, this is a shell script.
Oh.
Oh, wait. Yo, all right. Check this out.
We got cat, first script, shell script.
It's a shell script, right. The file extension, .sh, says, hey, look, this is a shell script. A shell script is nothing more than a text file with Linux commands in there. And every time we run that file, it'll run through all the commands in that file. It's badass.
That is.
So-
Get fancy.
So, exactly. So if I cat this file, which I did, there's only one line of code, and it's just echoing some text to the console.
Speaking of shell scripts, that reminds me of like, like personal experience. From personal experience, renaming. There's like a script for renaming files.
Yeah?
emulator, what do you call them?
Yeah.
Memory files for video games.
Yeah.
It would just go through a list of, I guess it would like compare the headers of the files, compare the headers of the files to a list of known headers, and then just rename the file according to that entry.
Yeah.
And it was just a shell script. It was kind of cool.
That's badass.
But I had to do some research on how to run shell scripts.
The concept of emulators and ROMs, I think, is A, utterly fascinating because I like playing old games, but B, it's a really great segue into a technology called Docker containers. We talked about this, I think, when we went to like the tour of the office, but being able to package applications inside of these things called Docker containers, kind of like how you can package an old Super Nintendo game in this thing called a ROM. You can run it on an emulator. It emulates like a Super Nintendo, for example.
That's just a personal experience, like anecdote. Like, hey, yeah.
No, good example.
I've run shell scripts before. It's fun.
Yeah, it's super useful.
It was a script called NES Toy. Nintendo like runs.
What was it? A PC you ran it on?
Yeah, I ran it on my Windows command line. Like I had to CD into the directory where all my games were, and then I ran it, and then it just compared, and then it just goes through all the ROMs, compares the headers to the list, and
Yeah.
renames the files.
That's awesome.
And it even puts them in the folders, neat little folders, like that by the country of origin.
Yeah.
By the company that made the game. They
Oh, dude.
puts it into neat little files.
That's awesome.
So when someone develops an app and use an emulator to learn the content of the app or to test them, is that familiar to shell scripting somehow? I just want to know if I ever used shell scripting and I didn't know I used it.
Oh, I see. Potentially, you find shell scripting used primarily to automate tasks, like automate tasks things that you would do on the command line. Generally, if you can automate that or encapsulate that logic, you would put that in a shell script. I'll give you an example. Every time, let's just say like Linux systems administration, every time like a new user, you had to onboard a new user, you had to set up their account, set up some stuff for them, like you would shell script that. I want to run this script and then tell me if anything jumps out at you all. Okay, so we see line 1. Hello, this is a shell script. What's going on line 2? Yeah. Yeah, this thing up here, when I run this script, I'm getting this. Why am I getting this?
Telling you what time.
Yeah.
Me?
Let's look at the code.
Why are windows flows? It's dripping like down.
Oh.
Please tell me what's going on up here. If we can wrap our head around this, we can call it. I've got a command, I'm printing some characters to the console.
Yeah, so there is a date function.
Yes. This is a function. I'm printing some characters to the screen. In that, I'm embedding a function, if that makes any sense. Let me see if, let's visualize it. If I
So
go...
you're saying you're making it to where when you type date, it'll give you the date.
Yes, exactly. And I'm including that in the string of characters that I'm printing. Exactly. Yeah, and I didn't do a great job explaining that, but if I...
So you're concatenating the character with that date function.
Yes.
So like when you type in first script, SH,
Yes.
show the date automatically.
Yeah, and I use the special syntax. I use the backticks. But if I include a function in the backticks, look at this.
So I'll just automatically do it.
Yeah, or if I did something like... Conceptually very similar.
Yeah.
Here I'm expanding the value of this variable when I print this to the console. Same thing. I'm not expanding the value as much as I'm invoking this date function. Does that kind of make sense?
Mm-hmm.
A little bit. Okay, I need everybody's help. There's one change to the shell script I want to make. I want to get it to print a greeting of some kind, and then to show whoever the current user logged in is. But we have to do it in a shell script. I think we have the tools, but let me open this up.
Wait, you have to use a shell script to
Yeah.
figure out who's logged in.
Yep. So Julius, exactly. So with this script, I want to have a greeting like this, like, hello, but I want to also see the current user logged in. What would I have to do here to make that happen? Okay. Syntax-wise, any idea what that would look like?
So echo, no.
Yep.
Echo.
Yep.
And then parentheses.
Close, very close. Not quite parentheses, it's going to be backticks. So I've got one backtick. What's the command I want to run?
You want to.
I want to see who the current user logged in is.
How do you do backticks?
Sorry, I'm good.
Oh, yeah, no, Angela, no worries. The backtick is right there.
Oh.
Does everybody like have this file open in Vim or just?
Just me. But we can all, we could all, it would be great if you all wrote your own files. But we
Yeah,
could all.
technically, yeah.
But what command is it? Who or is it who am I?
Who am I?
Who am I? Who shows all the current users signed onto the system? Who am I shows me the current logged in user, the user executing the command. So if I did something like any other changes I could make to the welcome message? It's going to say hello, and then it's going to run that function. What else could I do to make it a little more, I don't know, friendly?
You add the variable.
I was thinking something like, no.
How to delete a file?
How do I save this?
Sorry. It's
Escape shift.
WD, right? Sorry, right key. WQ, right.
Great. Do we see how we got this though? Every time we run this script, it's going to say greetings, current user, because the script looks something like, because we've got that function in the backticks. If we put all of this together though, I'm serious, the commands we learned today, the concept of environmental variables, and then the idea that we can throw those in a script and we can run those kind of ad hoc, we can pretty much automate anything, right? Like this is the crux of like automation, automating sysadmin tasks, things like that. But this is all I have for today. If anybody has any specific questions, comments, thoughts.
So every time you call in a function, you use those slash which.
Yeah. I would encourage all of you, it would be really kick-ass while we're all logged into this server, if you all could do something similar, that would be awesome, but if not,
What do you mean similar?
like write a little shell script that does something. It can be anything.
So how do you write a shell script again? You just
Vim.
.c.
As long as it's
okay.
.sh, yeah. If you can create a file with .sh with some stuff in it, that would be.
Okay, so I got it. I followed the directions to make it executable, and then I executed it.
How did you pause? How did you make it executable?
Well, okay, so there was only one step. It's just you use the command chmon. I have to break that one down, but
That's
apparently it makes it execute.
correct. Yeah, it stands for change mod. Yeah.
Apparently, yeah.
Okay, very good. So
I
we
mean-
made it executable. This is great. And then
When I ran it, it just said greetings, current user, and then it doesn't actually execute who am I. It just
let's open the file.
and I did make my own script.
No, this is awesome. Backticks instead of single quotes. So backtick that.
Really?
Yeah. Otherwise, great job.
What do you mean unknown mark? Is it? Yeah.
Oh, Vim.
Vim is not letting me.
Before you can modify a file, you have to go find or insert.
Escape. Right quit.
And then the syntax, yeah, is weird.
There we go.
Dude, this is awesome.
What if? Can I wall it? No, I don't know. But I'm gonna try it anyways. I don't know if it's possible to do that.
If this is something that's of interest to folks, I mean, I'm serious. I'm happy to go as far down into the rabbit hole as anybody would like. Yeah.
Oh, see how many commands there were?
I'm going down the rabbit hole because first I just wanted to the first thing that I researched myself was how to send a message to all the users connected, and then I just figured out. Like I went the extra mile and figured out how to
Just
make
type wall
my
and
script
then your
executable.
message.
Now
That's
I want to
called
figure
Donald
out
Trump.
how I can get execute on everybody's.
No, for sure. Yeah.
And not because
Totally
that's
Didn't
not,
really
that's
do
not,
much
this
good.
is some hacker stuff.
No, for sure.
I want to figure out how to execute it on everybody's. Cute. Cute. So, but yeah, how do I want to.
We'll talk. We'll say that next time I come in. Again, I'm happy to talk about this in greater detail. One thing to think about also, especially for folks who are interested in networking and/or hacking, like this is kind of crux of how hackers. Right? What? You have to know the command line.
Who said that?
How do you delete the
That was
file?
Chris. Yeah.
Really?
That's Chris.
No, he admitted it. You admitted it.
I know you.
I was not myself.
That was
Yes,
you.
that's you.
But yeah, we all
Nice try,
can't
Chris.
be
You have no proof.
on this network right now. It's secure and anonymous.
You're the only one who knows about memes more than anyone else.
It's not. I mean, you all have unique identifiers, but it's just kind of hard to tell.
No.
who's who.
No, totally.
No.
Did it.
Do you understand the concept, or have you heard
See?
me talk about
Nope.
encryption?
They did it.
There's encrypting data in transit.
No, no, it's you. I know how you post memes and everything.
Does that make sense? Kind of conceptually.
Conceptually, like,
Just
like there's key there not SSH, but it was like I remember correctly.
Is it being bad?
PGP. There we go.
Yes.
I remember. It was on the tip of my tongue.
PGP.
PGP, which is you can like encrypt files,
Yeah.
and then you give the person who's going to receive the file the key, and then they can unencrypt them.
Exactly.
You can decrypt.
Asymmetric cryptographical encryption is what that's called. Asymmetrical meaning you can give one person a special key versus symmetrical encryption where we both have.
What about hashing?
What about hashing?
Isn't that one of them too? Isn't that also part of SSH?
Partially, yeah. Hashing is a really important concept. I want to tell you all real quick just something to trip about. Remember that key we had when the SSH connected to this computer? We had to download that key.
Mm-hmm.
The same cryptographic technology in SSH is used for HTTPS. Just something to think about. So every time you're on your browser, let's say you're logged into like your bank or something, and you see HTTPS, anytime there's any kind of secure traffic going, it uses the same underlying cryptography that SSH uses.
Wow.
So you're saying essentially, if they have access, if my bank allows access, someone can just go right into my bank account.
It's not that.
No,
it's not that. It just means it can't be intercepted. Like.
Right. It's a way of communicating data in transit, meaning that literally the bits that are being sent to and fro from your computer to the bank server
Alex, let
is
me
encrypted.
give you
It's
another.
very, very tough to decrypt that. Very tough. Like
Alex,
close
let
walls.
me give you another example. Let's say I try to send you a mail, like a letter mail. And okay, so the mailman gets it and sends it to you. But the thing is, someone kills the mailman and steals the message. But here's the thing: the message is encrypted. That only the two of us can understand it. It's like that.
Okay. So anyone can intercept it, but they're not going to be able to do anything with it.
Yeah, because they can't read it. It's encrypted, and that we're the only ones who are able to read it. Or that it could be just in another language that no one else but the two of us understands. Chris!
What? That wasn't
Stop,
me.
Chris.
I'm on my phone. What the heck? That's not me.
Chris.
Yeah.
That's
That
Oh,
was you?
I
Yeah.
thought it was a man.
okay.
See, look, she was laughing right there.
See, Alexis, you've become a hacker now. You have fun. You're a hacker now. Have fun. You can just, if you figure out how to remote into people's servers, then you can just.
I just want to figure out how to get into everyone's bank account and steal $1 a day.
That's
Remember, Alexis, remember what I told you?
What a troublemaker.
Alexis, remember what I told you? Even if you somehow were able to intercept the data, you can't read it.
We wouldn't be able to. I want to find out a way to do that, so that way people just have $1 missing every single day and nobody knows where it's going.
Not that easy.
I would be so rich.
Alexis, not that easy. I mean, you can intercept a message, but to decrypt it, it takes a lot
I
of.
feel like that technology's coming, Angela.
Yeah, we're quantum computing, but that's not even ready yet. Right?
Yeah,
Like,
it's possible. If you're a hacker, you can do that. Some hackers do.
or just use a quantum computer.
Just get like a really low quality bank and just get all their users and just take $1 a day. It'll be fine.
Yeah,
And if they
right.
only have 250 users, that's $250 a day.
That is so morally bankrupt. No pun intended.
Wait, what?
From
Just
what I-
imagine, just from like 60,000 users, that's $60,000 a day. And people were like, it's $1, oh well. Even take $1 every other day.
That's actually what most large banks and companies do. Like,
Yeah.
I'm almost positive.
That's
Even small
exactly.
banks use-
Overdraft fees, starting up fees.
Yeah.
So you're already getting booked off, I'm just.
I pay close attention to that shit. Just take my word for that. And I notice like when I use T-Mobile every now and again. T-Mobile will like try to change my bill by like 50 cents, a couple $. I'm serious. The kind of changes where like
They
you
do.
wouldn't really notice. I've called them multiple times. I'm like, okay, my plan hasn't changed. My usage hasn't changed. Why is my bill going up? And they try to, oh well, there was some counting tax. And it's like, no, you know what happens is they know if they pull that shit on 1 million customers, and
Nobody will
nobody
notice.
notices.
They
Yeah,
come down.
that's it.
Yeah, so your tax, like they'll be like, oh, there's more state taxes. It's not. Because I worked at Sprint call center, and that's exactly what we were told to tell them.
Yeah,
And it literally said Sprint taxes, not state taxes.
yeah, and you gotta just, and it's only a couple bucks, right? But it's the
But
principle.
it's a couple bucks from like every
But
single
they do it to
person.
everybody, yeah.
But when they
Capitalism.
say
Yeah, I know.
tax, you can't complain.
You can't complain because you can't do anything about it.
Well, there's one thing you can do about it. You could switch to another carrier and just boycott.
But then that carrier is going to do it also.
Yeah, right.
Like
Now
every
my
carrier.
carrier does it.
Who, Metro?
No,
We got them Obama phones for
not
free.
even.
No word.
Have you heard of something called Mint Mobile or Mint Sim?
Oh, is that new online thing?
Yep.
It's an online, like, it's not like a place, you just go online and sign up and they send you a SIM card.
This one. That's literally how much I'm paying for my phone each
Tell us
month.
about what.
About that movie.
Actually, I'm paying
Oh,
pretty
you
much.
just go to mintmobile.com and it's just like a phone carrier service, but online.
Yeah.
I mean, they'll still have taxes and stuff, but shit, $15 a month from here is what I see.
for two
15.
for two
1
gigabits
five.
Oh, that's-
for 2 gigabits of 4G a month. Or if you're like me, you can go up to
Oh,
$25.
you said 2 gigabytes a month? That's still
Giga-
not bad though.
But it's
Gigabits?
It's
Yes.
a little bit different than byte. 8 bits in a byte.
There's bits and bytes?
gigabyte.
Oh,
I can't
man.
remember.
You're doing great. Don't trip. All good.
I don't pay my phone bill, so I don't know.
Yeah. I had Metro PCS for the longest time.
Funny thing is, this
I
thing
miss
this
it.
thing's on the
Pretty
T-Mobile
decent.
network
Pretty
also. Like
T-Mobile, yeah. I got T-Mobile a couple of years ago. I had my Metro phone though for years. It was $45 a month for like 20 years.
again, this
It's still only $50 a month right now.
yeah, or just pay 15 like I do. Let's see.
Yeah, it's
Do they sell phones?
Yep.
I need an AT&T phone.
You have to get an unlock phone though.
That's fine.
Oh, hold on. Let me close this.
Does anyone have an AT&T phone they don't use?
I wouldn't recommend using an AT&T phone. You have to get an unlock phone.
Well, my parents pay for my phone. It's AT&T. I don't like the slow internet.
Oh yeah, if you use up your 4G for a month, it'll go down to 3G, which is really slow.
Oh, girl, that's why you go with AT&T Unlimited.
Yeah, El Paso is too expensive for my
It
budget.
is hella expensive.
I mean, Mint's like recommended
wow.
for people who are light or moderate light to moderate data users.
Hey, did you do the check request for this? Did you think
But yeah, as long as you're not in a rural area, you should have good coverage.
Yeah.
okay, sorry about that.
And it's on a T-Mobile network, so if you have, so basically how you feel about the T-Mobile network or reception is the same way you should feel about.
I personally found that T-Mobile, of all the big providers, is like the lesser of all evils. That's just my opinion. But compared to like Sprint and AT&T, I've heard AT&T is really awful.
Here it is.
Yeah.
Oklahoma is amazing.
It's good. They run the tight ship out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, as long as you're staying in the urban areas, I recommend you getting this plan if you're a moderate.
Yeah, it's
Like
definitely,
modern.
definitely something to check out. I'm gonna check this book out as well, so I can learn how to do math.
I took it from the library, so you never have to return
Which one?
it. San Francisco.
Dope.
Wait, did you check it out or did you just took it?
I just put it in my bag and walked out.
She checked it out.
Checked it out for the long haul.
Okay then.
I did.
Motivator. How's Sylvan math?
Boring.
More boring or less boring than this?
More boring.
More boring than that.
Theory.
As well as my focus is more on hardware, not software. So I kind of sleep through software also.
Yeah, it's funny. Usually, years ago, I was very much like you. It just so happened I got into the software, but when I was like a teenager, especially, I was like, oh, like I didn't even software.
I mean,
And it
I
just
have no
kind of
idea.
went 180. But the reason I bring that up, I'm
The
thinking
reason
about
that was
those
a
kind of computers.
on transition.
Might even try to get some help after focusing on class.
Well, to be fair, you can't have a conscience without a brain, right?
I really want to switch.
So you can't have software without a
Oh,
hardware.
so no, you didn't tell anyone?
That's a really good
I know.
analogy. Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
The funny thing now though is that the hardware has gotten so powerful
So that's why we were
and so
like hiring.
and cheap relatively. Relative, right? I mean,
But it'll
I
be
was
like-
last time I was at Fry's Electronics, they had these crazy motherboards with
Hopefully not in the middle.
4.4 gigahertz quad core processors.
4.0.
Yeah.
Holy.
Yeah. I wanna work with these.
These are not multi-cores, right? There's a single cores. That explains it.
Yeah, and I was like,
Okay, go
you know,
ahead.
What I'm
like years ago that was $1,000 easy, just like out the door. And not forgetting also solid state drives make a huge,
I know.
Oh, you know,
huge, because all the textures and all of that is historically on disk, so that was like a
myself, because I've never really
costly transaction every time you want to load those textures, but with a solid state drive,
It just loads instantly.
it's instantly, yeah.
Yeah.
Because you know it's all flash. Conceptually, the solid state drives, it's all flash.
Yeah, it uses PCIe speeds.
Right,
Not SATA.
Exactly.
Exactly. Best things ever.
Well, I'm a gamer too, so I know that. So I know about that.
Yeah, see, for a long time was like, was the bottleneck.
Yep.
And then
And I remember those big PCI ribbons back in the day, yeah.
you put more seasoning on it. Other than that, I think it's
Wait, wasn't old PCI metal?
You don't know.
I can't recall.
Which is surprising. Because
Do they still have AGP? Accelerated, or has that been phased out? Do you recall?
AG what?
AGP was, they had PCI cards.
Accelerated graphics.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure if they use that anymore. It's been a cool minute. This is horrible. They still make Blackberries.
forget about Chinese food, okay?
Or you're all out tomorrow on Friday?
Yeah, sadly.
There is, but not really. But
It's Black Friday. It's Black Friday.
Yeah.
Okay, we are still broke.
Fair enough.
I remember years ago, the Old Navy, they had a Black Friday sale, and it was like, it was just pennies. You would even get like new clothes for, new shirts for like $6. Really, really, really reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
Were people getting trampled and all over, and it was cluttered.
It was pretty bad, yeah. Trampoline.
Something tells me Westfield Mall is gonna be packed.
Have you ever been to the mall here? Do they have a van store? A Vans outlet. That's where I need to go.
Van store? You mean like the shoe store?
Yes.
Command line.
No idea.
Commands. Yeah, that's more than. That's quite a bit actually.
Do we have an outlet here? Like this place that's not a mall with discounted stores?
On a server, edit them
Yeah.
with them,
Dude, that's
Yeah.
super badass.
and make scripts.
Because like if you go to the mall, it's gonna be like all regular price. But if you go to the outlet, it's gonna be like.
It's not usually in San Francisco.
Leveraging
You're gonna have
resources
to
online.
go,
That was badass, man.
Yeah.
Here's a really
Again, I'm serious. This is
The information around right there.
this is in terms of
but
like
I think even
the
there,
overall
they're
class. This is about as far as I want to go. But I'm serious, man. Anytime you see that you're like this, we can go however
I
far.
actually would.
As you can imagine, though, we just.
Unless if you're trying to go to Ross.
Let's just go to Ross, Marshall.
No, because like in Oklahoma we have the outlet store and they have a van store, and I got these for like $15.
Oh, I think you're.
No,
That
so
yours was like near Lincoln.
high price shoes for low. Yeah.
Normally, I like the outlet
NTE, so they're all
stores,
weatherproof.
but generally, like I don't know, maybe it's a California thing. I don't see the kind of savings I'd like to see at the outlet stores.
Yeah,
I,
you
I
just
went to the
live in
I went to the
California.
I went to the sunglass outlet store, and they wanted like $150 for Ray-Bans. I was like, that's the outlet mall. Like, maybe I'm missing something.
It's so weird because it's like
Go to the
it
Zoomy
costs like
store.
the same amount to ship here as it does anywhere else in the nation.
I went to the Zoomy store. They wanted like $100 for Nikes. I was like, I thought this was like outlet mall bill. Like, anyway, I'm ranting.
What's out here? It's California.
Okay.
Gotta go to Texas for the Lolo.
I'm down. I like Austin.
I would literally drive like 4 hours just to get discounted clothes. It's great.
In a perfect world,
Yeah.
if they had like good outlet malls with like legit
Or
discounts
maybe
and whatnot, I'd be all over that.
Yeah, no, it's just California, Chris.
It's-
Like,
is it?
anywhere else is gonna have cheap.
Yeah.
Wait, is this the entrance is a regular?
And it's funny because I did GED.
Sad.
I just want to do, I just changed
Oh,
it.
it's Samsung.
Oh yes, time for one.
Yeah. You missed a class, but I put in 6 hours. It's
Oh
been
my
real-
gosh.
Or I put in 4.
This is gonna be
for that day. Because you were doing.
No, I didn't do it.
Oh, you did do it. That's,
What's up?
What am I gonna do?
What?
well,
I'm trying to figure out what I'm gonna do with myself.
You're right. I should just mind my own business. Take my own advice and my own business.
I know business.
But I'm trying to be funny.
where's the
Saying
name?
like, pretty girls are.
All right, Angela. Chris. Peace out. Happy Thanksgiving. Bye.
Thanks for coming.
Of course, my pleasure.
Oh.
So much for coming.
Absolute pleasure.
Very well.
Very nice meeting you.
Oh my
More. I'll see everyone next week.
Drive safe.
Yeah. Happy
Will
Thanksgiving.
you come back?
Dude, teachers again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's not yet. You know, I learned a bit.
Great job.
But you can just go by the way.
Yeah, take it easy.
We should be fine here. I don't.
I don't,
That's gonna be any troublemakers in this group.
I have to get it done.
There's one trouble.
I
There's
mean,
one.
Chris.
There's one
There's
trouble.
like
Chris
one.
is
He's a troublemaker. She's a troublemaker. I'm a troublemaker.
Everyone point.
Look,
Everyone just point.
No. Look, I will admit.
Why are you on me? I'm just not just me.
I can own up to derail.
Ties up. You derail the class all the time.
This is one time that I'm willing to own up to though. This is the time where I was like, yo, I figured out how to send a message to everybody and interrupt what they were doing. Like stop everything for a Lamau.
We're doing this.
Yes.
You leave tomorrow? Or next week?
How do
Ultra white, just because.
Oh, the show.
I have been really happy. Thanksgiving.
Also-
Always open it.
Goodbye.
I'm just gonna open this curtain. I'm feeling like.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Like, thank you.
That's Oh, did they say what time food lands?
They said that, so when I called,
Yeah.
NB said that the person as bringing us the food is getting on a lift.
Okay.